Hello world, welcome to the 198th Climate Change Emergency Protest here in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. It is September 23rd, 2022. I'm standing in front of the Majestic Theater here in Gettysburg. I'll explain about that in a minute, how it ties in to climate change. And next week will be the number 199th Climate Change Emergency Protest. That'll be on September 30th, 2022. So, this is the Majestic Theater. It was built in 1925. It housed vaudeville, silent movies, and vaudeville presentations, which was a cabaret type act. It had 1,200 seats at one time. President Eisenhower lived nearby when he wasn't at the White House. It was at the farm. They call it now the Eisenhower Farm. Let's see, in the 1950s, he used to hold press conferences here when he was at the White House, so they would do whole talks inside here with press conferences, which was kind of interesting. And in 1993, they had the premiere of the movie Gettysburg, which I was in, and I am this tall in the movie briefly for Pickett's Charge. You can see me in there. And in 2005, the Levan family restored this theater, which is on its way down. So bear with me here while in traffic. It's real bad. So Levan family refurbished the theater, and this is what you see today. It's split into several theaters with a main ballroom. So if this was a movie, no one would believe it, and I'm going to do action right now as it is a movie. If climate change was a movie, no one would believe it. The background would be leaders ignore the issues. Totally. They don't talk about climate change at all. They briefly talked about it when they were doing their Climate Change Act, which was tied in with the Inflation Act or whatever it was. So that's not the way to go about attacking climate change. This issue is huge. This is the biggest issue in human history, and they're not doing anything. Nobody's talking about it. Not the Squad, not any Democrat, not any Republican, and they're totally ignoring it. Because why? It's an election time coming up in November, and they don't want to be seen as being whatever concerning climate change. So basically, they don't care about your kids, my kid, any of your family members, or anything like that. So here we are. We're gonna, we're all arrows in all directions point towards we're going extinct, and it's too big. It's too scary of an issue, or too crazy of an issue for politicians or the media to talk about it. And this is abject insanity going on right now. This is psychopathic behavior, and that you're presented with an issue that's going to wipe out all life on Earth, and they're choosing not to address it. The politicians aren't, or tackle it head on. No politician worldwide. I had hopes for King Charles III, but now he's saying he can't do the same issues like he used to as a prince. So whoop-de-doo, we're probably going to all go down the hill in a handbasket here. So the media does not report the issue or linkage to climate change. They'll report about what's going on, but they won't tell you why it's happening. So right now we experience this summer fires in Europe, USA. Siberia has permanent fires called zombie fires in the peat region as the permafrost melts or thaws. Australia in 2020 had 3 billion animals die. People forget about that. Now they're having floods in eastern Australia. But they had 3 billion animals die: reptiles, birds, frogs, and mammals. If you remember the image of the koala bears suffering and being burned in the forest. And then they said that people would go into the forest, try to help the animals, whatever. And at night they'd hear painful howling. I mean, it was a hellscape in there. You have heat waves in India, Pakistan that happened this spring. And birds were literally dropping out of the air due to heat. They just die in midair because of all the drought and everything and the heat. Greece, Turkey, Spain, Portugal, France had fires, as well as Great Britain had minor fires. There are 90 major fires in the United States as of last week, western USA. Cold snaps in Texas 2 years ago in January, which totally shut down the system, which they tried to blame on renewable energy, and in reality it's just a grid problem that they have in Texas, because they do things squirrely there, which is they have their own separate grid and they don't link up with the grid throughout the United States. So you had typhoon in Japan, you had Eastern Pacific that just hit. No one talks about that. Why? Because they're too distracted talking about Trump or the Queen or hurricane. I don't know, whatever they're talking about. It's distraction. Makes you wonder what is really going on in the world when they're not talking about that. USA, Puerto Rico was hit by Hurricane Fiona. 80% of the people were wiped out with floodwaters and everything like that. Canada's going to get hit by Hurricane Fiona in Nova Scotia area and eastern Canada, way eastern Canada. And it's going to be a Category 2 probably when it hits, and could be quite destructive. Canada does not usually have hurricanes at all hit. The USA is going to get hit by a major, and I mean major hurricane, the Florida region, if it crosses over Cuba and hits that warm Gulf water. If it takes a hard right turn and goes up the Florida coast, it'll be probably Category 1. But if it gets out into the Caribbean or the Gulf of Mexico, the waters there are crazily warm, and it's going to be a monster hurricane. So all conditions point towards that becoming a monster hurricane. It's going to be named Hermine or something. Western heat waves, this past summer, you had crazy amount of heat records being set on a daily basis for September and also this summer. New York, and they're experiencing massive drought, 1,200-year drought, the worst in 1,200 years. New York City was flooded last year, if you remember that. Downtown New York, a deluge of rain that came up all the way from Louisiana, which was unheard of. New England's experienced a massive drought, Massachusetts especially. Last December, you had tornadoes in the USA and Tennessee region. You had mudslides in Ecuador recently. These things that the media is not reporting it. Starvation in Horn of Africa, they're never covering this. Horn of Africa and Sudan, 70 million people are going to starve to death. But who cares, right? Pakistan, India have massive floods, Pakistan especially. Rivers are drying up in Europe and China. Yangtze River went potentially partially dry. The Po River in Italy, the Loire River, parts of it went dry, and the Upper Thames River in Great Britain went dry, England. Thwaites Ice Shelf in Antarctica, that's in danger of collapse, and that'll raise sea levels 3 to 4 feet. But what it does is, which is devastating for the world, but what it does is potentially allow other ice sheets and glaciers to fall into the ocean after that, because the Thwaites Glacier holds back a lot of different glaciers. You're going to have, eventually what you're going to have is potential volcanoes, earthquakes, plate shifts. This is all due to the ice melt in the Arctic and Greenland and everything. And it shifts the weight. And I'm going to say that not only are you going to have potential plate tectonic shifts, you're going to have potential axis tilting of the planet. And, a couple of degrees tilt will change the entire environment totally. So deal with that. I don't know if it's scientifically proven, but it would seem to me if you have a basketball with ice on the top and bottom and then a lot of weight, and you shift it to a different part of the basketball as it spins, that it potentially could start wobbling all sorts of weird ways. And I say this too. Eventually, California and the West Coast is going to get a megastorm that's going to hang out for a whole week on end, and you're going to see massive mudslides. And due to no vegetation, the megastorm will cause massive flooding and destruction throughout the entire West. But we'll see if that happens or not. Once El Nino comes into play instead of La Nina, you're going to see all sorts of changes going on that we can't even imagine. Not only that, but also heat throughout the United States and also the world. So is this a movie? If it was, I don't know if anyone would attend because it would go under crazy fiction. But this is what's happening. It's reality. And we're going right into a hellscape. We're going to go extinct the way things are pointed right now. And our politicians are doing nothing. And if you're voting for people that believe in fracking, such as for natural gas or anything like that, you're crazy. You're contributing to your own demise and your own family's demise. And I don't mean your kids and grandkids. I mean your demise, because this is how quick it's going to happen. We're a couple steps away from massive tilting points, and they're happening right now. I mean, you can see things happen, tipping points. You can see things happening right now. And once the Arctic goes and becomes a blue ocean event, all hell breaks loose, because you have massive amounts of methane up in the permafrost. And methane is a greenhouse gas that's 162 times more potent as a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide in the first 2 years. So we're really risking everything, and we're playing Russian roulette with all the chambers loaded and the triggers being pulled, and nobody cares, including everyone that's listening to this broadcast, because if you're not protesting or doing broadcasts yourselves, you're kind of potentially contributing to the issue because you're not making it apparent that you're unhappy with what's going on. You're going to have to risk friendships. You're going to have to risk family ostracizing you and things like that because this event is much bigger than anything humans have ever experienced. This is called extinction. And everyone says, "Oh, we're going to die. Who cares?" It's not that. Yeah, everybody dies, but it's how we're going to die. You ask those people in Africa whether they're enjoying their starvation, and come back to me on that. So, next year is 2023. It's going to be even harsher than 2022. It has a potential to line up and be horrendous because there are no arrows pointed in a positive direction. None. A couple electric cars and a couple windmills will not do it. We need massive changes throughout the whole world as to how to control CO2, and not only how to stop it, but also how to bring it back down. And there are no proposals being done, nothing being done concerning that. So I'll catch you next week. That'll be climate change protest number 199. That'll be on September 30th, 2022. And if this was a movie, this is where I'd say, and cut.